order at 7:07. We're going to start off this meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance. And if we could rise and salute the flag.
You're in elementary school again.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Mr. Lyons.
Yep, next time it'll be someone else's turn.
Okay, so I want to thank you all for being here. I do want to start off with a little bit of business regarding our agenda. Item 5 is being removed from discussion this evening, so this is not going to be something addressed at the meeting. That's right. And so with that, we're going to move right into section 3, which is the work session, and starting with item A, which is the Norwalk Early Childhood Council Strategic Plan. I'd like to bring up Kathy DeCesar and Craig Kreller, please.
Okay. I'm speaking tonight not as the interim chief academic officer or even the math guy or the science director, but rather as the co-chair of the Norwalk Early Childhood Council. Immediately to my left is Kathy DeCesar. Kathy is my partner in crime, and when she's not volunteering around the city or serving on the board of directors for Norwalk ACTs, she's actually the senior vice president of Fairfield County United Way. So I'm happy to have Kathy on the team. Next to Kathy, Mary Oster. Mary is the early childhood coordinator for the city of Norwalk. Next to Mary is Nick Brophy. He's the principal of Jefferson Science Magnet School, and to Nick's left is Jamie Bonetta, our school readiness coordinator. She coordinates the $5.4 million school readiness grant. So we're here tonight. This is our executive committee. We help plan the agendas for the Early Childhood Council, and we're going to give you a very short PowerPoint tonight and then ask you and invite you to ask questions. Also on the Early Childhood Council is Heidi Keys as well, who's here with us tonight. We have a brief agenda. We want to give you some background on the Early Childhood Council. It was reconstituted 2 years ago. We'll talk a little bit about that. And our main goal tonight was to introduce to you the strategic plan upon which we have made massive progress in the last few months. We not only have gotten the plan approved, but we're ready to go into the implementation stage, and you'll see the timeline and the templates we use for that. And then we'll talk a little bit about next steps and positive developments. So I'm going to turn it over to Kathy, and since each of us will be talking, I would ask that you just hold your questions. I know I normally don't tell you that, but we'll answer all of them at the end because everyone is going to speak.
Thank you, Mr. Kreller. And just as a point of information as well, if I will be allowing the board members to address with questions, we'll address them as we get along. Thank you very much for the clarification.
All right. Is this okay if I stand here? I'd like to just not have my back to anybody. Okay. Briefly, we just want to make sure everybody knows a little bit about the history of the council. It was formed back in 2007, and it was the combination of 3 organizations in Norwalk that were working on early childhood issues. One was the School Readiness Council, which we're required to have because of the grant. One was an organization called Norwalk Kids Start Smart, which was a convening with the Grafstein Memorial Fund support and the United Way, and it was really trying to look holistically at what's going on for children in the community. And then there was an existing Norwalk Healthy Families Collaborative, and they joined. So those 3 organizations worked together. It was officially, 40 members, but there were really almost close to 100, I'm sure, folks that were working. And the vision at that time was that Norwalk children birth to age 8 are healthy, ready to learn, and succeed in school and life. And there was a rather large strategic plan that was created back then. I guess in hindsight, we think that maybe we made it too large, and it was a little too challenging for us. So in 2016, the council was reconstituted. It aligns with Norwalk ACTs. So Kids Start Smart has basically been, sort of doesn't exist. The Healthy Collaborative doesn't exist, but Norwalk ACTs has come in, and I think you all have heard something about Norwalk ACTs working on Cradle to Career. And so inside of Norwalk ACTs is an important piece of work that they're doing around early childhood, and so the council and Norwalk ACTs work together to really implement the strategies that we're going to talk about in a minute. We reduced our members down to 19. You'll see a list in a minute. They are appointed by the mayor and the superintendent. Craig is the superintendent's designee. I'm the mayor's designee. And they reflect the requirements of the different aspects of the community that need to be present in conversation. So if we can go to the next slide, those are all the folks that are currently serving. Everyone who serves for a 2-year term. And you'll see that it has got individuals who actually run early childhood programs. It has people who are supporting early childhood. We have someone from the Common Council, someone here from the Board of Ed, and most importantly, we have parents. We have one parent at the moment, and she's turned out to be quite a fabulous addition. We moved our meetings to the evenings to accommodate parent involvement, and if any of you know a parent who would like to get involved, we would like to fill our vacant spot. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mary, and she's going to talk to you a little bit about what the capacity of early childhood is in Norwalk. Before Mary gets to talk, I just wanted to sit down, I guess. So you'll see later how this information about roles and responsibilities dovetails with the strategy, but we did want to just give you a quick understanding of the scope of the work that the council does. So the first thing you're going to see is that, we're responsible for creating the strategic plan. The second most important thing is that we are obligated to implement all of the different aspects of the $5.4 million grant that we have for the school readiness funding. But in addition to that, the community has Head Start, which is federal funding, as you know, CDC funding. There's also another stream of state funding. So the council really is the place where all of that comes together in one place. We integrate activities with all the other stakeholders, and we talked about it. Norwalk ACTs is one of the key partners. We act as a liaison with the Office of Early Childhood, and I apologize, we did use acronyms in here and we didn't always explain them, but OEC is Office of Early Childhood, and sometimes a lot of things go on up there, some of them good, some of them not, and the members of the council stay very close to that action and attend a lot of meetings on behalf of the community and bring back some of the things that are percolating up there. As I said, often good, sometimes not. The other things we're doing is we're advocating around policies and practices. We're acting as a resource to address issues that sometimes people don't think about when we talk about this work. But just recently, as an example, we had conversations about the food insecurity that our providers are seeing when the kids are coming to school and they don't have much of anything in their lunchbox. So I'm here to tell you something that I just learned this morning. There's now a project underway with the parents at Odyssey, which is one of our largest preschools. And they're going to be going to visit the person-to-person food pantry, which is our largest food pantry in town. They're going to get exposed to what's available. They're going to hopefully get signed up. And we're going to start to move, hopefully, more resources into the hands of the parents.
Is it possible to extend the backpack program?
Yeah. We've had that question, and we have talked to the food bank about it. It's a little challenging. The design of that project is really for kids who can, sort of handle the food and open it themselves and be able to. So we're looking at what the alternatives might be. The other thing that Mary's working on is she's working on federal funding streams to see whether or not we can take advantage of some of the things that the school district does in the K-12, but we haven't been able to move it down to preschool. So more resources inside the providers, and then also more resources home to the families. But I started that backpack program here, so I really I appreciate that everybody values it so much. We also do a lot of things to encourage parent engagement in the community. If you haven't heard about the Week of the Young Child, Mary's going to be wanting to sign you up for some activities. We also, and it's actually not 100, it's 1,000 books before kindergarten. We partnered with the Norwalk Library to engage parents in reading with their children and getting them into a program where they can register just like when they do the summer reading program. They can go right on that same site and they can register. And then we have a Raising Readers program, which is really designed to help a lot of our English as a second language families get comfortable with the idea of reading and building just sort of that sense of this is a really good thing for you to do. And it's building a lot of cohorts of parents who are beginning to support each other. So now, and family engagement in general. So now we'll talk about how many spots we have and what the landscape is.
Okay, so we thought it was really important to give you kind of an overview of what we have here in Norwalk because it gets a little complicated. There's a lot going on. So there are several different areas that we look at in Norwalk. We have a Head Start program that's based at Ben Franklin and Nathaniel Ely. That is a free program. It's a 6-hour-a-day program currently being run by CDI Head Start. And their capacity is 216 children. So those are only 3 and 4-year-olds. That's a preschool program. And that is only a school year program. Currently, they do not offer a summer program. However, with other funding, we have been able to offer a summer program to those children because we feel, it's very important that they're not doing nothing in the summertime. A lot of them are going to kindergarten in the fall. School Readiness is by far the largest kind of grouping of children. That's 636, and they are in programs all over Norwalk. They're in full-day programs, full-day programs, school-day programs. They're in school buildings. They're in city buildings. They're in private programs, old school buildings. You name it, they are all over Norwalk. So that is preschool, and that is the state school readiness funding, that $5.4 million that we talk about a lot.
Mr. Kimmel, before you jump into that question, I do want to hold to Mr. Kreller's recommendation that we hold all questions to the end. I know I let Ms. Meyer-Mitchell slip in there, but I really do want to have all board members wait until the end if we could. Thank you.
Okay. All right, then we have what we call the child daycare contract. That's funding that comes through the city. The city is the contractor, and then we have subcontractors. And that funds 99 children, so that funds 56 toddler spots at Ben Franklin and Nathaniel Ely, as well as some preschool spots at Ben Franklin. So those are the only subsidized toddler spots in Norwalk, and I will tell you that they are full always, and that there is a huge waiting list. We have a real shortage of affordable toddler care in Norwalk, and that doesn't even consider the lack of infant care, affordable infant care. We have, of course, the Norwalk Early Childhood Center with a capacity of 175. And then we have our last two entries there, which are center-based that are not funded. So those are programs that do not get any kind of funding. They're private pay, and there is a capacity of 1,027. Now that's their licensed capacity, so that does not mean that they're servicing that many children. Beyond taking, they can be licensed for 20 and choose to have 16 in a classroom. So they, and that's their choice. So they're not necessarily serving that many children, but they serve infant toddlers as well as preschoolers. And then we have family child care, and that's kind of always a moving target because while family child care is a wonderful solution for many families, they are also very small businesses, and sometimes they go in and out of businesses pretty quickly. They have a wonderful support through All Our Kin, which is an organization that really supports them, helps them with their business model and so forth, helps them to get licensed. But it's tough. It's one person a lot of times handling up to 6 children, and they don't always stay in business a really long time, which is no reflection on the quality of care. It's just the reality of the business. So there's approximately 330 spots. Again, we don't know that those are all full, and that's their licensed capacity. And really the majority of our infant toddler care in Norwalk is in home daycare. So it's in home daycare or it's in unlicensed care, what we call kith and kin, which would be like your grandma, your neighbor, your aunt, and so forth. So that's what we know that we have here, and that's also privately funded. There is also the state funding stream, the Care for Kids funding stream that parents can access that is a help for mid-level income parents to access child care subsidies. It is opened and closed because of our budget, and right now it's just newly opened, but it'll probably be closed tomorrow. I don't know. And then we do know that 85% of the children approximately 85% of the children entering kindergarten in Norwalk have had some type of pre-K experience. Then this is the reminder that on your table you have the Norwalk Early Childhood Guide, just for your reference, that you can peruse at your leisure, and sort of gives you the landscape of what we have here in Norwalk.
So in that brochure, what you see is 10 providers that we subsidize through the School Readiness Grant at 14 different locations. So that's what you're going to see in that brochure. Okay, that's a lot to throw at you in terms of background, but this is really what we wanted to speak with you about tonight, the new strategic plan. And essentially it can be boiled down to 3 words: ready to learn. We want all of our children who enter Norwalk's kindergarten to be ready to learn. This is the crux or the foundation of the strategic plan, and we use a variety of different measures to make sure that our children are ready to learn. Here are a few.
Hello, everyone. So these are our performance measures for the strategic plan. As you can see, we start with DIBELS. DIBELS is what is used in our kindergarten programs, and it aligns with our PELI. So PELI is going to be our preschool early literacy indicator, which is used throughout all of our funded programs right now. We are looking to try to expand this out to some of the other programs that you see on your flyers. Our preschool enrollment, we're really looking at making sure that our preschool children have an experience in preschool before getting into kindergarten. As Mary said, we have 85% of our children coming in with some sort of preschool experience. We really want to make sure that we can raise that number as we're continuing. Preschool attendance. I track preschool attendance every month. I get a Word document, a Google Sheet that basically shows all of the children and how many days they attended school. So with that, we do look to see if we can collect some data around trends. How much are the children attending school? How does that affect them? The ASQ is the Ages and Stages questionnaire. This is a developmental screening. It is broken down into months. So it can start as children as infants, and it goes up through age 5. So I believe it's 60 months is the highest. So that is going to be starting to be used on all of our programs. We are currently working on getting a pilot program started with the ASQ and the ASQ-SE. We've had maybe 5 or 6 programs start implementing the screening, and we have one program that is going to be working with our ASQ liaison, who is a new hired position. The ASQ-SE is the Ages and Stages social-emotional screening, which, again, we're going to be used just along with the ASQ. Both of these screenings are very parent-friendly, and they will come with a lot of strategies and ideas and ways that the families can have help at home and the teachers can have help in school. CLASS is an acronym for Classroom a Scoring Assessment System, which is an observation tool. It is a tool where you have to become reliable to code classrooms. Myself and Mary are both reliable in preschool. Mary is reliable in toddler. So basically what it is a 4-hour observation in each classroom, and it generates a code. It's between a 1 and a 7, and what we're doing now is taking the data that we're collecting from this and using it to provide professional development. Mary and I are also MMCI trained, which is making the most out of classroom interactions. We are in the process of becoming certified, and basically what that is a 10-session training model where the teachers come and they learn, they watch videos, we talk about experiences, and it breaks down the class tool. So we're growing in that area as well. The Connecticut Early Childhood Professional Registry is basically the state database. All teachers are in there, all of their credentials, all of their professional development is all housed in this one state warehouse, which is all online, and I have access to everything. So we basically have to make sure that our teachers are, our head teachers have bachelor's degrees. All of them have to have it by 2020. So it is a way for us to track our teaching staff. And then the NIAC Parent Survey is a survey that programs give out annually to all of their families. They are required to have, I believe it is 70% of their families to fill out this parent survey. Again, it generates data. It lets us know how families feel about the program. And all of that is collected by me. So that is another way that we can collect the data. Oh, and it's me. Yeah? Oh, I don't know.
Hold that. Thank you, Ms. Mitchell.
Nick, can you hand me that paper, please? So the first goal in our strategic plan is school readiness. So it is broken down. We have 3 goals. It is myself, Mary, and Nick, who are the chairs of these groups. And I am on school readiness. Throughout our presentation and throughout a lot of conversations, school readiness is really looked at as funding because it's the name of the funding stream. But really, this goal is really around school readiness, about getting children ready for kindergarten. We're really looking at ways to have high-quality programs. That pamphlet that you have in front of you has a lot of different programs. We offer a lot of different choices, a lot of different size programs, a lot of different buildings, a lot of different options. But we want to make sure that they're all using the early learning and development standards as a requirement, and they're also all high quality. So basically, and I think you guys have some of these, the strategies. So I'm going to just touch on just a few of the strategies that we're currently working on and some of the ones that I'm really excited about that we will be working on. Go ahead.
So in your packet, you have a copy of the entire strategic plan, and under each of these goals,
oh, yes, that. Yeah. Yeah. So this front page is going to be the school readiness strategies. So one of the first ones, 1.1, is the one that we're currently working on. We are going to be reviewing all of our policies that we currently have. A lot of our policies are outdated. So we do have a policy review group, which is another subgroup of our council that will be reviewing a lot of our policies. On the second page, I want to draw your attention to 1.3, which is development and design of curriculum maps. I'm sure, maybe I'm making an assumption that you guys are familiar with the curriculum maps that were done with Craig Kreller and Janine Goss in Norwalk Public Schools. So we will be mirroring something along that line. We'll just be using the Connecticut Early Learning and Development Standards. 1.8 is implement a data management system and warehouse to improve program efficiencies. I just named a lot of data off of our performance measures that we're going to be collecting. We need someplace to put it. We have all different systems, so really looking at something that we can have, something we can create, something we could use that will house all of our data is something that we is a good, really important goal that we have, and something that I'm really looking forward to helping create. 1.10 on the next page is another big goal that we have with working with Norwalk ACTs and our kindergarten teachers. Janine Goss has been a big support with this, is getting a really community-wide approach to kindergarten transition. It is a nervous time for families because they're going from maybe a smaller school to a elementary school. So we're really looking at how we can work as a council to smooth this transition and make it as easy as possible. So that's just a few of the school readiness strategies that we're working on, but we have 11. And here's Nick.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Nick Brophy. I'm the principal at Jefferson School, and I'm going to talk a little bit about the second goal, which is very integral to this overall set of goals, which is the parental involvement or the family involvement. And Heidi Keys is on the committee to talk about family engagement. We want parents, especially parents of very young children, to begin to be informed and involved. And we find that especially as we enter into the elementary school, if parents have a sense of what's out there, if parents have a sense of what's important for their children's growth and development, then those children will achieve. And to that aim, we have a number of specific strategies to keep them apprised of information about child social and emotional development. For example, we want parents to be aware of literacy and to know a bit more about the gap, let's say the achievement gap. One of the big things that came up as we developed this goal area was that we really were keenly looking at data. We have more and more information that comes from this early childhood PELI data, for example, that will feed very nicely right into what occurs when children enter into kindergarten. We also know about attendance and how important that is for children to come to school. When children are very young, they might tend to get sick a little bit more, but as they develop the good patterns of proper attendance when they come into the regular elementary school, those habits are already formed. So that notion of informing and involving parents. Also, if you are able to look at the strategy sheet, there are a couple of particular strategies that are developed right in terms of keeping parents informed and really rather engaged. Strategy 2.1 provides access for parents and the ability to assess. They're able to provide feedback to providers, and they're able to help to make programmatic changes. As the elementary schools and the upper grades, secondary schools have school governance councils, we want parents to be involved in a more formal manner, so parents with very young children can start to get a sense of that their voice matters, that they're part of the effective change for their children's growth. And also, 2.2 and 2.3 are about parent awareness as to that literacy development and that social and emotional development. Because if parents know what to expect, let's say, from a very, very young children in terms of their language acquisition or speech patterns, let's say, they're able to get more assistance from a preschool or pre-K provider. So that family engagement piece is really important, and I will point out, and this comes up in a couple slides later, but these strategy sheets are under development and they're just being developed. So I know eventually these would all be posted, and we would want a lot of involvement from various stakeholders. But the way that, if Mr. Kreller could advance 2 slides, I'm just going to note this now, and then we'll go back to the other one. If you take a look at, this is how the strategy sheets are set. They're set with a goal-oriented timeline. The notion is that the particular strategies will have action steps, and that the action steps will have persons responsible for those steps with a particular timeline. And to the point that these strategies were developed by the committee over time. There were a number of stakeholders, parent stakeholders, people who did have a view on this, so that we were able to really bless this properly. And those are just some examples. So now I'm going to turn it over to the third goal area, which is the advocacy area. Thanks, Mary.
All right, our third goal is advocacy, and our preschools really are very reflective of the same student population that you have in elementary schools. It's a very diverse population, and so we know it's really important for the children to see themselves and their own cultures reflected in what they're learning in preschool. So what we're going to be doing is really helping teachers look more deeply into what their practice is, the curriculum, and how that is impacting their children, their cultural competency, and that's something we don't really talk a lot about, especially in preschool, I think. So I'm really excited because we will be working with our preschools in, we'll be having kind of a roll-up-your-sleeves seminar in May with a group called the CTQ group out of Charlotte, North Carolina, who will be coming up and helping our teachers really examine what they're doing and then also build a really great database that can be accessed by all teachers, all it's really for preschool, but any teacher could access it with lesson plans that would be reflect a lot of cultural competency and reflect the cultural makeup of their classrooms. So we think that's a really important thing, and we hope that's just the start of something that might, go up into the upper grades a little bit more and help really bridge that. I think that's I just wanted to make sure I didn't miss anything. Are you next?
Okay. So I think Nick really said what needed to be said with this slide. The interesting thing about having robust templates like this is that not all the work has to be done by the Early Childhood Council. Some of this work is already being done throughout the city of Norwalk by the city, by Norwalk ACTs, by other stakeholders and providers. Our goal is to categorize it and collect it in one place so we know who is responsible and we don't overlap or double do our duties here. So that's really the benefit of this template. We do want to talk a little bit about the positive developments. One, we were able to pass the strategic plan through the entire council with quite a bit of input from the community and all the stakeholders. We have some great new assessment tools like CLASS that Mary and Jamie are certified in. We're collaborating with Norwalk ACTs on social emotional projects. Mary mentioned the culturally relevant teaching, which we're beginning soon. And one of the most exciting things this year is the online kindergarten registration. We'll be putting kiosks throughout the city at key places like public libraries and in City Hall and at the ELL Welcome Center, where parents can just come up and snap with an iPad the picture of their documents. It goes into InfoSnap, which talks to PowerSchool, and we'll be able to get much higher percentage of students registered more quickly. So that's really going to be fantastic for us. And we've made some real partnerships around data like the Peli, which is used at all 10 of our providers at 14 sites. So we're actually getting uniform data throughout the preschool world in Norwalk. So we're really excited about that. Some of the things we need from you folks, especially the Board of Ed, is continued commitment to really linking preschool with kindergarten. On February 15th, during our professional development day, we're actually sending our kindergarten teachers out into the community to visit and meet with preschool teachers so that both sides know exactly what to expect and students can be even better prepared for kindergarten. So we're really excited about that. And we're going to continue with the IT department and Ralph Alanzizi to continue to share relevant data between the preschool and Norwalk Public Schools so that we have all the information we need when these students come to us. So we're pretty excited about that as well. And we want to thank you now, and we want to put a face to our students and give you a chance to ask questions as well.
Thank you, Mr. Kreller. Okay, I will now turn it over to what I'm assuming is a very anxious board to ask some questions to our panel.
I want to take a quick second just to thank the presenters and also our Board of Ed representative, Heidi Keys, who sits on the Early Childhood Council. When the superintendent and the senior management team joined Norwalk Public Schools in 2015, 2016, the data that I remember is that 90% of all students, early childhood students, pre-kindergarten, are in school, 9 out of 10. And of those 9 out of 10, only 4 out of 10 enter kindergarten ready and on grade level. And so that gap we intend to close, and I think we're doing that through the Peli assessment and all the good work you just talked about.
Thank you, Dr. Costanzo. So I echo those, and I'll address you also at the end of the question period, but I will open it up to you, my fellow board members. Ms. Keys.
I just wanted to actually add a comment. I'm just very fortunate and thankful to be part of this committee. I think it's an amazing group of professionals that are come together in a cohesive environment that really work for the betterment of our youngest learners. And it's exciting. We have school readiness, advocacy, parent engagement, really getting families involved in their child's education, and also having really a seamless transition from preschool to kindergarten, so we don't have the gaps that we've seen before. So it's an amazing group of professionals that come together, and it's a fantastic group. And I'm glad that we had really a large group that we really narrowed down. And I think we're able to accomplish a lot more by doing that. So I'm passionate about early childhood. I know my fellow colleagues are as well. So thank you, everybody, for doing this. Thank you. Great job. We're working really hard.
Thanks for your help as well.
Mr. Keller.
Thank you for the report. That's how I got into education to begin with. Our son was in Gardens Nursery and Preschool in Manhattan, up on basically on LaSalle Street between Columbia University and Harlem, and it was one of the few public-private combination schools in the city. And I ended up on the board of directors, and soon after I ended up, with my wife's permission, a third grade teacher up in northern Manhattan. One thing that we would, which was, I think our son was very fortunate, that they had toddler care, extensive toddler care. And a few years back, I happened to be at a zoning commission meeting for another issue, and there was an application there for what amounted to some toddler care. And part of the application dealt with the demographics and how much toddler care there was available in Fairfield County. And I was appalled. This was shocking for a well-to-do county, how little there was. And I just was in complete disbelief. So I think that's something we should really begin to push, That's extremely important. I recall the data that you talked a year or two ago about less than 40% of the kids entering kindergarten are not ready, even though they've had some daycare. And what I'm concerned about, and I've been concerned, and Mary, you would remember, between 2005 and 2009, there was, during that time, with Mary Peniston and Dr. Porter, there was an effort to begin to coordinate and create links, coordinate what was going on in the different preschools, and then to create better links. So what was going on at the preschool had some relationship to what was expected. And that went nowhere for a variety of reasons, which you are, I'm sure, were not the best reasons in the world, but it went nowhere. And so I'm glad to see that these links and the coordination, I think, is probably as an important an issue as you can deal with. So my question in relation to that is, by the way, we did something unique in New York. We did not like turnover that we're experiencing and all the preschools were experiencing. And we did something experimentally, and it worked better than we ever dreamed. We geared the salaries to the providers, the teachers, to the Master UF, United Federation of Teachers contract. They were being paid the same as the kindergarten teachers in the public schools. So there was not this revolving the door where you come in and teach preschool, and then as soon as there was a kindergarten opening anywhere in the city, you were gone. And rightly so, because you couldn't live on a lot of those salaries. I'm curious how the salaries work here among all of these, and I'm assuming because of that and how expensive it is to live around here, we still have that revolving door problem.
So Bruce, you've certainly hit on an issue that we talk a lot about, and quite honestly, if anybody wants to be part of a little work group to try to figure it out, we'd love to have you, because it's really, we want our teachers to be well trained, and the state has actually put some requirements in place for that. But it's a little bit like the unfunded mandates that people talk about, right? Because there isn't really no funding that goes along with that. And so we do have a concern that we've put a lot of time now into the training of our teachers, raising the, just the level of support that they can give to the children. But it is still an issue with them leaving for places where they can earn a better wage. And our programs are really small businesses. I know I said this to the superintendent when we met a couple of months back, but we're talking about small businesses that don't have the Care for Kids is one funding stream, parent fees another funding stream, but they don't have the elasticity in their ability to raise revenue, right, that matches the expense side, especially when we want to improve the overall quality of the program. So I'd love to have an economist join the group, right? Because this is it's an economics issue, and I'd like the board to think about, when you think about budgeting and you think about the ESA legislation, how some of the funding can maybe move downstream into preschool, so that we can accomplish some of these things.
One point on the salaries. We calculate, you're right, you're dealing with very small numbers of kids, which means if you have a lot of turnover, You're going to have some families will be looking for a better deal, more stability. We calculated that if we can maintain full enrollment, we could pay those salaries, but we had to maintain full enrollment. And we're only talking about 4 classrooms. It wasn't that big, okay? And it worked because the quality of the teachers improved, the reputation of the school improved also, and we kept it at full enrollment. When you're dealing with 60 kids, if you have 3 or 4 kids who are paying privately, if they leave for whatever reason, for greener pastures, you're going to have some deficit, you're going to have shortfalls. But we were able to, what happened was the increased salaries, the gamble paid off. The enrollment stayed almost 100% capacity, and we were able to afford it. Now, I don't know what happened years later, but it created you know what I'm getting at. It may be counterintuitive, but I don't know what the enrollments in all these little businesses are. But if each one is lacking 2, 3, 4 kids, you've got some problems, and it's hard for them to stay afloat.
I would just say that we are pretty much at capacity.
Yeah.
That's great.
You think about the 300 lunch population that exists in the school district. That population is starting in the preschools and ending up. So.
Thank you.
Just to answer your question about enrollment, in the 636 slots or seats that we provide through the grant, we have nearly 100%. Thanks to Jamie and a diligent effort in our bylaws, which states to be in good standing, you must maintain full enrollment. We keep it to the max, to the best of our ability.
How are they paid? How's it determined? The providers?
They apply, and actually it comes from the $5.4 million school readiness grant. So of the seats you saw, we control 636 of them through the council.
Thank you. Any, Julie?
Sure. So first of all, a comment. I had heard about this elusive preschool guide brochure, and so I'm thrilled to see it. As someone who's a parent of a toddler and have been starting to look around, it's great to see it all in one place. In the past, I was looking at several different websites and trying to find information. So kudos on the brochure, because it's helpful to have it in all in one place. I do think just based on this community, is this translated to other okay, so perfect. So it's at least Spanish, possibly others maybe, but I know Spanish is the predominant. Okay, helpful, great. And I guess one quick question that I had, so you're talking a little bit about, you mentioned NCTQ coming in for to talk about cultural competencies. Is that the National Council on Teacher Quality that you were referring to for NCTQ? Or?
No, they're out of North Carolina, the University of North Carolina.
Okay.
Yeah. Chance Lewis.
Okay, thank you. That's helpful. Are other elementary staff or district representatives going to be participating in that training too? Because I know you were talking about the importance of transitioning early childhood ed into elementary school, so I'm just trying to think about kind of a more seamless transition by trying to have as many as possible staff either at the elementary level or district that could then kind of keep some of that learning going.
It'll be absolutely open to anybody that is able to attend.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. You may want to encourage a little bit, at least at each elementary school or something, so that there are more folks to build that kind of critical movement going forward. Thank you.
Julie, to answer that question, Dr. Adamowski has talked about adding culturally relevant teaching to our PD days in August, so we're exploring that. You'll hear more about that soon.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Corbett. Mr. Meek?
Hey, quickly, I just want to thank the committee for their hard work. I want to thank our host, Yvette, and the NACC team for having us tonight. I have 2 children here who will be in the first graduating class this June.
Wow.
And they are thriving. It's just a personal note. This place is wonderful, and I know it's not everything for everybody, but I would just say to all those in doubt, Rome was not built in a day. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Meek. Ms. Keys?
Just a final comment. just to piggyback on what Julie had mentioned, for some of our kindergarten teachers, as far as the outreach, I love the idea of our kindergarten teachers visiting some of our preschools and some of these children that will be ready and acclimated on to their respective schools. But we have more of that, and we talked about that, but I think even children meeting their respective kindergarten teacher way in advance, I think would be absolutely huge for a lot of families.
So we do have, through Norwalk ACTs, we do have a pre-K to K transition group that's been working on that kind of thing. And there's some barriers we have to figure out, but just having teachers kind of have an exchange so they can see what the other one is doing is so helpful. We're also starting kind of a partner program, like an elementary school is going to partner with a specific preschool. So we're working on that kind of thing, and then hopefully that other stuff will also come later. But this has been helpful, and just so helpful for the teachers to really get to know each other a little bit and build a relationship. And just it's been very, very, very helpful.
Inspiring to
Yeah.
hear that.
When we were out talking to folks in the community, it was a very engaging conversation at Odyssey Preschool, and the parents invariably wanted to know, well, what's kindergarten like? How do I start to prepare my child? I don't know anything about it. I'm not from here, and I'm here now, but this whole school thing is a mystery to me. So to the degree that we can all partner around ways to make more transparent, sort of what this educational system is that we have in Norwalk, I think it will be, just so helpful and welcomed by the parents. So.
Community outreach in a community environment. But one other thing I just also wanted to touch on, our head teachers, I know they need to have their 4-year degree by 2020, correct? Where are we at? Where are some of the schools that we have where some of our teachers are going?
Most of our schools are in compliance with that currently, but we do have some programs that might have, one or two. Our larger programs, but the biggest problem is teacher turnover. Once you are, you're meeting all the qualifications, the next day a teacher can come in and put in their notice, and that would make you not compliant. So, it's a ongoing issue that, hopefully things could work out, but.
Thank you, Ms. Keys. Ms. Meyer Mitchell?
I have a lot of little questions just to figure things out. First, I do want to add to what you said. How does our toddler capacity compare to our neighboring towns? Because so I'm Danish, half Danish, and my cousins in Denmark laugh at us here in America because we don't provide that kind of early child care, which prevents women from re-entering the work market and sometimes end up with a 10-year gap in their career history. But in addition, I believe that early exposure to education by trained professionals that they experience there may directly feed into the incredible test results that they're having in their K through 12 programs. That my friends thought I was nuts. I started my child's curriculum at 1 year. We did a lot of work early on, and I think that some countries do. So how do we compare to our neighboring communities?
So all of our toddler programs are full. Our private preschools, the ones that are not funded, are full. I did a couple months ago kind of just a survey, just an informal email survey, and most of them responded that they are full. Our subsidized, we're the only, there's no one surrounding us that has subsidized toddler care. So we have 56 toddler spots. We're hoping to add a few more. And they're full, and they have waiting lists. And the issue is that toddler care is very expensive, as I'm sure you know. For those of you who don't know, in Fairfield County, the full rate for child care is about $1,500 a month for a toddler, maybe more. So that's a lot of money for a lot of people. If you're making, you're a middle income earner and you need some help, and that's why our subsidized spots are full. And that's why a lot of people turn to unlicensed care, kith and kin, other ways to figure out other ways. And even if we could add more toddler spots, financially it's very difficult for our providers because you kind of need more preschool to kind of offset the cost of the toddler care because it's so much more expensive. And the ratios are so much smaller.
We are hoping that any applicant that might apply for the Head Start grant would also apply for Early Head Start. We don't have Early Head Start here in Norwalk, but this last grant, the opportunity exists for someone to apply for both Early Head Start and Head Start. Now, that would mean they'd have to reduce the number of Head Start slots, but given that we're in much better shape in that area and we are not at all in good shape in the toddler area, we've encouraged the Early Head Start application.
Excellent. The list of testing that you shared, how long does that take in a child's?
So we can go down the list. The Peli, maybe 10, 15 minutes. The ASQ and the ASQSE can both be done in small group work with multiple children at a time. But if you were to sit and do one of the questionnaires with one child, 10 minutes. It's all just, draw on this line, hop on this line. It's all very developmentally appropriate skills that the children will be doing because it's by month of their birth. So it's not something that's going to take too long. The class observation, where Mary and I go into the classrooms, those do take 2 hours. It is recommended, so because you do 4 cycles of 20 minutes. Did I miss any of them?
The kids aren't testing.
No.
Yeah.
No.
Excellent.
Right.
Okay. Do the home daycares have a curriculum? Do we offer a curriculum to home daycare to help guide them? And do we implement the Peli in those environments?
So a lot of our providers use the Connecticut ELDS, the Early Learning and Development Standards. And a lot of the home daycares are affiliated with All Our Kin, which is a program that really helps support them and provides curriculum support. I mean, they can, really do what they want to do, but many of the home family daycares are run by people who have college degrees, who have education degrees, who actually have lesson plans and follow a curriculum. It's not just babysitting at all. I mean, they're really amazing places for kids to be.
That's really wonderful to hear. And I have one last niggling question. Do you want a parent for that council that is a preschool parent? Okay. Sure. That's it. That's all I have.
Thank you, Ms. Mitchell. Mr. Lyons, any questions?
Nope.
Fantastic. Okay. I'd just like to echo my fellow board members' comments that you guys did a wonderful presentation. Also, as Ms. Corbett said, this is a fantastic document. I was perusing this during the presentation as well. I'm looking forward to seeing the continued development as this goes forward. The strategic documents here are fantastic, and I look forward to seeing them filled out. So thank you so much for your time tonight. And just for, yes, Mr. Kimball.
Just to comment, what I think is appropriate. One of our main goals is to eventually close the achievement gap.
Absolutely.
So you've got to remember, there's a lot of kids beginning to take their standardized tests after having 7 quality years of education, where others have 4. And there's just really no way that K-3 teachers can make up that gap. So this is extremely important for our work.
Absolutely agree. Just to draw everyone's attention really quickly, we have had a board member join us. Ms. Lemieux has joined us through our technological policy of remote access. Hello, Ms. Lemieux. Welcome. Hello. Yes, she is in her position as usual. This is fantastic. Thank you to Ralph and everyone that helped get this going. So we are going to move on to our next work session topic, which is being led for discussion by Ms. Cherie Sherry. We are going to be discussing Norwalk teacher absenteeism study and recommendations. Just as a little background, this was something that had been recommended as we were getting some, just to get some clarity on what the situation was with our absentee rates, so we can have kind of a strategic understanding and make sure that it's being properly used. So, Sharice, I will wait for the clamor to calm down because we are in an echoing room, and I will turn it over to you.
Okay, thank you. Good evening. First, I'd like to say thank you for your patience in allowing me to get this report together. We had to triple check everything. We wanted to make sure that our data was correct. Stephanie Garrett is here with me. She's one of our staff members. She's our talent acquisition and budget person. She also does a lot of our reporting, and she's been working with the systems. So thank you, Stephanie, for all your hard work on this report with me. So this report, before I get into the report, I just wanted to say over the last 2 school years, we've been looking at our data, putting it in a place where we can report data correctly, use data correctly, and actually use it to create these reports for you. I don't know if we were always in a place where our data was correct, and so that's what we have been doing over the last 2 school years. This data was pulled from ASAP. ASAP is, does everybody know what ASAP is? So it's the sub finder. So teachers report themselves absent and a sub is inputted. And so this data was actually pulled from ASAP.
Before you continue, I do just want to make a comment to my fellow board members. If we can also hold our questions until the end like we did with the last presentation, it's a pretty hefty document we have in front of us, so thank you very much.
It will actually go really fast, but yes, if you can hold your questions to the end, that would be helpful. We removed from this report any professional development, training, jury duty. The only data that should be in this report will be sick time or personal time. Any long-term sub-data, for example, if someone was out on a leave, FMLA, for a long period of time, over 10 days, that was also removed because we were looking at daily absences. So I just wanted to make sure that I clarified that. Also, as I was looking at the report, I did just a small amount of research. We looked at teacher attendance data in charter schools. My clients actually sent us a really great document, and I used it. We also looked at data in public schools, but the study that I had was 20 of the large urban school districts, so I didn't really use the data, but just looked at their data points to see where they started looking at chronic absence, and they were using the number 10 days, so they were defining it. So that's the only reason I use that data. We also looked on OCR, which is the Office of Civil Rights, and school districts are required to report their attendance data. There are only 16 or 18 school districts in the country who report to OCR, and Connecticut is one of them, so I thought that was a good place to pull data. The last point I'd like to make is that the data that we looked at is from the 2016-17 school year. The state of Connecticut's data is from the 2015-16 school year, so just so you know. And then all the other data that we used was whatever the most recent data was in our research studies. So again, the PowerPoint is lengthy, but there are really a number of graphs in there, so we won't take a lot of time, and then we can ask questions at the end. So this study was commissioned as a priority implementation step of the strategic operating plan to respond to several years of a sub-cost reflected by an increased level of teacher absence. These are Dr. Adamowski's words, and so what this really meant was that we were looking at the sub-budget over the years, and it looked like it was climbing and sometimes going down, so we may have thought that it had something to do with teacher attendance. I will tell you that when I went through the study, the substitute account is not necessarily the best indicator of teacher absence. So it's not reflected in this report. What's reflected is the actual attendance in ASAP. The purpose of the study is to answer 3 critical questions related to Norwalk teacher absence rates, also to ensure that the sick leave is monitored and is taken in accordance with district policies and procedures, and to recommend strategies and programs that will influence staff attendance in a positive way. And I felt like we needed to define the purpose because the purpose was not to just see what our teachers were doing and to say our teachers were absent. We had a bigger purpose behind this. We actually wanted to incentivize teachers who were coming to work. We would like to support teachers who might need support to attend, if there was an attendance issue. We wanted to see what the data looked like. So there were different purposes behind this study. The study focused on 3 questions. So the study informs what the annual absenteeism of Norwalk teachers, we looked district-wide, school by school, and by grade level. Another question was, how do we compare to the average absence of teachers in the state of Connecticut, nationally, and in charter schools? And again, this was not a very deep study. It was based on a specific report, and within that report, they looked at charters, and they also looked at other districts. And then we wanted to know for ourselves, is there a pattern to Norwalk teacher absenteeism? Because if there's a certain pattern, this is where we would focus our policies and our incentives and anything that we needed to do as a district, we can individualize or initiatives based on the patterns in our district. So at this point, we're not looking at what anybody else is doing. What is happening in Norwalk? What is our culture, and what do we need to do to support our culture to move the strategic operating plan forward? So we try to make this a very positive study that is relevant to our district. So again, I mentioned this before, the data that we used, the most recent data for the state of Connecticut for 15-16, a charter school study on teacher absenteeism, which was actually done in September of 2017. And that study, they actually looked at traditional public schools. And I'll tell you specifically what I got from there. A report called Roll Call, which was the importance of teacher attendance, and then information from the Office of Civil Rights. So here's where I started to define what frequent and chronic absences would look like for Norwalk Public Schools. I did not sit in my office and create any definitions. I wanted to share my thinking and share what I think we should be exploring as a district. And as we continue to work through this process, the district will define for us what we feel is chronic, what we feel is frequent, what we feel is excellent, or if we even want to use those categories. So we started looking at students. In the state of Connecticut, students who are absent, in Norwalk actually, students who are absent 10 or more days are subject to intervention and social work support. That's very general, but 10 days. In the charter school study we looked at in September of 2017, a teacher who misses 10 or more days of work is considered chronically absent. So another pattern, they're looking at 10 days. So we felt maybe we should start looking at 10 days. So the purposes of this study, Norwalk is looking to consider a teacher frequently absent if a teacher has missed more than 10 days of school, because it looks like we're looking at 10 days as a benchmark. And we're also, for the purposes of this study, looking to consider teachers chronically absent if they missed 16 or more days of school. And the reason I actually use 16 is because the state of Connecticut so I didn't realize that the state of Connecticut actually says that a teacher has to have at least 15 sick days. So I was looking at the DIRG information, and I kept looking at all of the contracts and noticed that everyone in our DIRG had 15 sick days, and I'm like, well, what's going on? Well, it's actually a law. So we should not penalize, I believe we should not penalize teachers for using what we are giving to them. So if we're telling them we give you 15 days, then really we're not saying they're chronically absent until they've gone above and beyond that 15-day, which brings 16 plus. So that was the reason I think we should explore that chronically absent would be 16 plus. Okay. This is data from the research. So in the research that I used, there was a sample, and the school district used this grid. Excellent being 3 or less days, moderate being 4 to 10 days. So if a teacher is missing these days, this would be the scale. Excellent, moderate, frequent, and chronic. Their chronic rate was 18 or more. Just something to consider as we're building our own policies and practices. This slide is about Norwalk Public Schools and the state of Connecticut. Okay, so this is the big number that we kind of all wonder about. So the most recent data shows that the state of Connecticut reported absences at an average of 9.6 days in 2015-2016. In Norwalk, we're reporting absences, again, through our ASAP program, where teachers are reporting themselves out and we're taking data out of it. We are reporting at an average of 10.3 days in the 16-17 school year. So this is kind of how we compare to the state on an average. So the average number of days that teachers are missing, 10.3. So the following slides are going to be a number of graphs, and these are kind of the implications for the Norwalk teacher absence data. What you'll see in the following graphs, you'll be able to identify patterns in attendance by schools and by grades. So you'll see which schools have higher attendance and lower attendance, so forth. You'll see patterns of attendance by the days of the week, and you'll see patterns of attendance by months of the year. Okay, so I'm going to quickly go through the slides. And I don't know if you can see them, but if you have a packet, you should be able to see them closely. So on this spreadsheet, on this graph, we looked at elementary schools. So we wanted to look at what the schools look like. As you can see on this graph, I believe Kendall is at 11.7 an average, so that would be the school with the highest amount of teachers out on an average. The lowest was Columbus. Okay. Our next graph is by middle school. Again, you'll see that the highest here is Ponus with an average of 15.38. Our lowest is West Rocks with a 9.65. And again, this is information from the ASAP system. And here we have the high schools. We did grade level pre-K through 5 because the grade levels are covered in the middle schools and the high schools. So by grade level, this would be attendance by pre-K through grades 1 through 5. Dr. Adamowski was really interested in this data. He wanted to see, were kindergarten teachers out more, or were fifth grade teachers out more? So, this information was relevant for specific reasons. And then this was just a snapshot district-wide. So the total that you see on this page is actually the total days that teachers are out. So, 2,546 days collectively. It's not in a percentage. So that's what we're showing here. When we looked at the absences by days of the week, we wanted to see when teachers were out. Fridays, Wednesdays were, actually Mondays, but really Fridays.
I think they do, but not by much.
When we looked at it by month, interestingly enough, May, I'm not sure what was happening in the month of May. June is much lower, but maybe because it's a shorter month, but May was a month where there were a lot of teachers out. So when we looked at the patterns for the week and during the months of the year, it was Fridays and then the month of May. March was also very high. Not sure. And again, what needs to happen, I think, is we need to look at this data year over year to see what the trends are, see if things are changing as we implement policies. This graph, going back to the initial slide, where we talked about that point, 10 days. It looks like that's the date we're using for students. That's the date that they used in the charter schools and the other research points. It was 10 days. So I wanted to just compare what it looked like by percentage. So in a charter school district, 10% of teachers, 10.3% of teachers are out more than, or 10 or more days per year, okay? In national public schools, 23% of teachers are out 10 or more days per year. And in Norwalk, 38% of teachers are out 10 or more days per year. But what I wanted to show you tonight, and I think this is really important, is that if we were to define chronically absent, we really had only 12% of our teachers in that category. Again, I'm not here to define anything yet, but we do allow teachers 15 days. And so we have a number of teachers falling in the category of 10 to 15 days absence, 26%. So again, we have to really think about, what our culture is and what we want for the district. I will tell you that there's 5 to 6% of teachers with perfect attendance. So I think that's something to be celebrated. And so those are some of the incentives we'd like to talk about. We have a good number of teachers who have 0 to 3 days, 18%. 44% of our teachers are only at 4 to 9 days. That's really, I think that's good. I think our outlier is the 16 plus. I think if we had to do any intervention, that's where we would be looking. Dr. Adamowski and I actually sat and talked about some strategies. And he's not here tonight, so I'll try to talk through some of what he was thinking as well. But we broke this into 2 sections. So one is, what can the district do now without collective bargaining, and what would be some of the recommendations for collective bargaining? Of course, anything that has to do with pay for teachers, we would have to work with the union. And quickly on the right side, we thought of compensating teachers for unused sick days at the end of the year, and that will incentivize teachers who are coming to work and who are not using sick time, and they want to feel good about the fact that they have a benefit. Providing incentives for excellent attendance. So those are things we would have to work with the union on. On the left side, there are some areas that we could develop as a district. So, for example, this study was just based on teachers. Dr. Costanzo and I talked earlier about maybe we should be looking at all staff. The issue right now is all staff, they're not in ASAP. So we would have to figure out, are we putting people in ASAP? Are we doing a study? What is it that we would like to do as a district? But when we address the district, we should develop a district attendance policy for all staff, not just teachers, and include practices for appropriate use of sick time and personal time. Some of the things you might look at is year over year, people who are out on Fridays, if it's the same 12% of people certified or non-certified, are those people, the ones who are always out Fridays, Wednesdays in the month of May, and you look over year, because after one year of data, next year can look completely different, right? So if you have the same people doing the same things for a period of time, those policies should be able to address that. Currently, when teachers call out, they call out through a system. They call out through ASAP. They don't have to talk to anyone, so they just kind of push a button. Before ASAP, before automation of systems, a lot of districts required that teachers call their principals. Principals had to be available to answer the phone. Research says that if people have to call someone, they may not want to call out. So it's something to explore. Including teacher attendance as a part of teacher eval, I would say that we would only do this if a teacher was frequently or chronically absent, maybe even just chronically absent, because you would want to anyway under the professional responsibility of the teacher evaluation tool. budgeting short-term sick leave in the student-based budgeting by school so that schools may use funds for other things if attendance is better. So if people are in control of their sub-budget, they may want to preserve some of it. They may want to, within the school, find incentives and may be able to find money to help teachers come to work, right? So it's just a thought. This is where Dr. Adamowski shared some information about other school districts who worked in team environments. And within the team environment, there would be a teacher or maybe two teachers and like a paraprofessional who has a bachelor's degree or two. And if one teacher is out, the team is required to cover the teacher's absence. And what that does is it now puts the accountability on your team. And you don't want to disappoint your team, and you don't want your team to be mad at you if you're out and they're always having to cover. So there's a team environment. He wanted to talk a little bit about kindergarten and a kindergarten team, but he's not here, and I don't know if you know anything about about the team environment and how that works. No, yes, no. You do? Can you share how it might, I did it? Oh, I did it. Okay. All right, thank you. I wasn't sure. And then lastly, which is actually my last slide, is the implementation of wellness and engagement initiatives to support positive attendance. So the district is committed to increasing employee engagement through wellness programs, which will positively impact attendance. This is actually one of our strategic operating, I think it's goal 5 of the strategic operating plan, where we talk about wellness programs. So a couple of things are happening this month. On-site exercise and health programs. There is a school of massage therapy who actually want to come into the district school by school and offer massages to our teachers and our staff and so forth. So those are some of the programs we think if we tie certain things to engagement and wellness, people will come to work because they feel healthier and they just, it's just another strategy to address attendance. We have a healthy eating initiative. We just rolled out, I forgot the name of it, Field Goods for the district. We piloted in central office. And again, that's another wellness initiative. We're just trying to promote good habits and promote attendance. People are genuinely sick. People aren't just abusing time, they're sick. But, if we can do something to promote and help people remain healthy so they can come to work. Health screenings with our health plans, gym memberships, which is something we need to explore, and something that I actually forgot to put on here is the flu shot clinics that Mary Jordan has asked us to expand flu shots at every building, and it's something that the union, I believe, will be working with Donna Rostaki on, so that we can promote, flu shots and hopefully keep people well during the flu season. This was a really bad year. So that's the presentation.
Well, before I knew that was going to happen. As I expect, my fellow board members like myself have a number of questions on the presentation. I want to thank you, Charisse, for your diligent work on this. I think overall, it's a fantastic breakdown, a beginning step, a necessary tracking measure to, make sure that we're doing the best for our district. So, with that, I'm going to see some hands, starting with Mr. Meek.
Charisse, excellent work.
Thank you.
First of all, just congratulations to you. Hartford's gain is our loss.
Thank you.
In the short time we've had you, you've done tremendous work, and I want to thank you for that.
Thank you. Thank you.
So I'll just go quick. Slide 8 shows 10.3 days for Norwalk versus statewide of 9.6. Is there a standard deviation applicable to that number? How far out are we on the curve?
You mean as far as other school districts? Or
if a standard deviation was applied, it would tell us, are we 1 norm out or 2 norms out? How far out is 10.3
I think it was
versus the average?
3/4 of a. 3/4.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
I think you just told me that before. Right?
I don't know what to make of slide 11. PONUS is like off the chart.
It is.
Relative to the other middle schools.
It is.
Is there any extra?
we don't know, and so now this is why we want to look at the data.
A year-over-year trend would.
I think we need to look year over year. I think we need to actually start looking at where the 12. So Stephanie and I actually are going to look at the 12% of people who are over 16 days and where that's happening. Maybe it's at PONUS. This is where we now start doing the intervention. And you might find that the schools where there are higher attendance issues are where the 12% of people are. And then if we had to look at it by an individual, now we haven't done this for certified staff, but we've done this for non-certified. There was someone who actually had missed his entire allotment of time and then some for 3 years in a row. And when we looked at it year over year, I couldn't believe that he was still here. But we hadn't looked at the data across the years, and we actually had to have conversations, and he was finally terminated from the district. Now, that was an extreme case, but we didn't drill down because we weren't doing that. So now we can with the data. And it's not that we're looking to let anyone go. We just need to tell people that this is not what we're here for.
Last question is on slide 16. I was wondering if that was seasonally adjusted. I know we have vacation time in February and also April. Does that include the week
Is that the
off?
monthly?
Yes.
Yeah, that's your green one on 16. I was just wondering if that's adjusted for the number of days of school within the month.
Are you?
Right there, the green
This one.
Right,
That's why they're less.
so you said April's down, but does that include the week off?
Yeah.
It's a total.
It's the number of days that are available to work.
Okay, so like if you probably,
The-
if you adjusted this for the actual number of days in the month,
That's
this
higher.
this
It
shows
would-
an increasing trend throughout the year. These aren't just dips in
Yep.
February and April.
Right, I understand. So if we, so even in the month of June, we're reporting 2
Yeah,
weeks.
Yeah, okay.
Yep.
Sharice, would you be able to?
That's a good point. Thank you.
Present us with a follow-up that breaks these down by percentages of available days, like actual school days in the months?
Yes, we can do that. We actually had that
would be great, and I
data.
have a few others, but I'll let Mr. Meek continue.
No, I'm all set, thank you.
Yes.
Mr. Kimmel. Actually, Mr. Kimmel, I'm going to turn this over to Ms. Corbett first, since I got you first last time, if that's okay.
Thanks so much for this, President. It's really helpful to have the numbers in front of us. So I would echo Mr. Meek's point and the request to have it by available days. That would be really helpful to see. So looking at this and thinking about the fact that students are also absent during the month. So if I think about a student maybe absent 5-10 days per year, possibly mostly because of being sick, but other reasons as well. Plus you have teachers possibly out 10 days. There may only be 20 days of school in a month. That's a student missing a full month of school of actual instructional time in a year. You magnify that over 12 years, you've lost a year of school. So this is deeply troubling. So I'm glad to see that there are some suggestions already in play, and I fully support many of them, especially the wellness programs, as well as some of the procedural changes. I think there was a little bit of illusion that to start doing a little bit of root cause analysis to figuring out what's going on, especially the discrepancies in different buildings, to really figuring out why the rates are so high. And I think there could be a lot of reasons here, and it could be morale, it could be negative school culture, it could be lack of support, there could be a lot of different things, and so having a really focused idea of exactly what's going on will make it easier to find targeted solutions to fix them. So I would hope that that's a potential next step. I do think one question is kind of thinking about some of the longer term fixes are looking at procedures and possibly policies, as well as practices. But I'm also thinking about the short term, and what are a district's responsibility to provide, or what are a teacher's responsibility when they're absent? What's their responsibility to provide appropriate lesson plans for those days that they're absent? So if there's a sub in the classroom, does that sub walk in with a lesson plan that they're able to follow? Or, I mean, when I was in school, it was you end up watching a movie because the teacher's out. So what is a teacher's responsibility for that?
I would
And
probably
you may
defer
not know the
to-
answer to that.
Yeah, I think it varies widely, school to school. Principals that manage this tightly asked to review a week's worth of sub-plans that are kept in a folder for an emergency circumstance where a teacher is out for a prolonged period of time. However, when an absence is occurring, a day or 2 days and happens at some point during the year, long after the sub-folder has been submitted to the main office, in those cases, ideally, the principal is still communicating with the teacher on a relevant lesson plan, as opposed to something that is set aside at the beginning of the year in those emergency circumstances.
Right.
The actual details of what those folders look like, I would bet vary, pretty widely.
Right. So thank you. That is related to one of my concerns, is then if you have subs coming into classrooms and lesson plans were written in advance, they're no longer actually aligned to where the students are and what the students need. So that may be something worth thinking about in the future, how to make sure that subs have more relevant lesson plans, because we always will have teacher absentee. I mean, that's a nature of the game, and that's appropriate. But thinking about how to make sure that there's still tangible learning. I love the idea of the team approach, because that may also encourage some increase. The other thing that I've seen some districts and states think about is having training the sub pool, so that you have a sub pool for individual schools that are ready to go and step in, so that it's not a wasted day for those students. So I guess I'll stop now. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Corbett. Mr. Kimmel.
Can I just respond to something?
Oh,
You
yes.
did raise a good point about the subs and training. It's something that our office has actually been considering. I mean, we've just become fully staffed over the last year. Thank you to the board for allowing certain positions. And we are looking at actually putting something in place where substitutes are trained and it's centralized, so that it's not just by building. So there will be some building things, but there will also be centralized procedures and for substitutes. So,
Mr. Kimmel.
Yeah, on that last point, rarely did the subs follow the lesson plans that were left.
Yep.
I would look at a little bit. We're dealing with data, and you really want to see what's going on. A couple things stand out. First of all, I could have pneumonia and miss 12 days and be absent. That's one absence. That's not 12. Now, of course, the child must miss 12 days of school, but in terms of evaluations and these, I had pneumonia. It wasn't 12 Fridays. So I think randomly just start to dig down and see what's going on, because what percentage of the teachers each year of that 16% had a terrible, terrible case of the flu, a car accident. So to me, it's always been the chaos in a school or the disorganization is the illnesses is basically the one and done illnesses. Day off, back to school. Then who knows, a Wednesday, a Thursday. But any organization can handle someone, Bruce has got pneumonia, okay? And then they make the adjustments. And they'll make sure that somebody off the street is not the sub, basically, something like that. So I think the data, you got to figure out which ones of those, what percent of the 16 each year, 16% chronically, there's something happened, from a car accident to a severe illness to a death, whatever it was in the family. The other thing that I'm always curious about, and I was talking to some of my colleagues before, when I was sick and I would come back to school, this is true, before I opened my classroom door, I'd shut my eyes and looked at the sky, and hopefully that the classroom was in one piece. All right? Those kids were missing a whole lot when they had subs quite often. And I always wondered if you followed particular students or cohorts from let's say K through 5, how many days? You get 180 days times 6, including kindergarten. What percentage of those days did they have subs? Because there has been a little bit of research on it, and on what happens to kids who are in terms of where they never experienced real, in urban districts, stability with their teachers, and how things get jumbled up in their heads. As teachers don't follow lesson plans, you go from China to Mexico from one day to the next, and the kid that thinks Beijing is the capital of Mexico. And when you think, why, what happened, it usually has to do with the chaos with the subs, not following what they were supposed to do. But the bigger issue is what percent of the teachers are out 16 times versus how many of those teachers are out once for 16 days. You got that would add a little bit of humanity to it also. You don't get angry at teacher A and then find out, oh, teacher A, I didn't know you had double pneumonia. My bad. Sorry. So I'm sure you could figure that. That's easy. That should be relatively easy to figure out.
So at the beginning, I actually did say that we took anything out that was. We did take anything that was a long-term leave out.
Let's say 7 days with the flu. You
Right.
didn't take that out.
Yes, you did.
We took anything that was consecutive.
Oh, you did?
We did. We did.
What was
We
it?
as best as we went through it, and we took consecutive.
So when you say 16, that's 16 absences, even though some are 3 days, some are 4 days, some are 1 days?
Yes. So most of them are not consecutive.
So these are maybe 2 at most for the most part?
To consecutive?
Or were those eliminated as well?
Okay, ask the question again, because I'm.
So to Mr. Kimmel's point, I understand what you're saying. And I understand that concern. I wouldn't want those numbers in here.
Right.
This report, these days, are they 1 day absences?
Yes.
So none of these are consecutive.
We went through and took out anything that was consecutive over, I think it was 10. Anything over 10 days consecutive, we took it out.
Anything over 10?
Right. But in addition to that, there were days that were less than 10 that were coded as FMLA, and we took those out. So if someone was in the system and they were coded as FMLA for 7 days, we took them out because that's an FMLA leave.
I missed that.
It's not a daily.
Yes. Okay.
So we went through and to the best that we could, we took out anything that was consecutive. If there was anything, nothing is in here that's over 10 days, number one. And number two, if there's anything that's over 3 to 10 days, if there was an FMLA leave, we took them out. If there wasn't a documented FMLA leave, we left it in.
So then it's fair to say that the 12% that you mentioned, for the most part, they were absent 16 times separate.
Yes,
Oh, that's
for the
a
most
lot
part.
different.
We got really
Because
close,
then-
and so
Then the days, and then it's the situation from the perspective of the student is bad. Because if you say, let's say the average is 3 days, 2 days, 16 days, let's say the average was 2 days, that's 32 days of school is missed. We don't really know. You were just pulling them out. So that's a lot of instruction that is being provided by substitutes.
right.
Thank you. I didn't realize that.
I'm going to go to Ms. Keys now. Thank you.
Three very compelling information. Thank you for submitting this tonight. A couple of points I just wanted to add. I think as far as the team approach, I like that approach. If that's something we can work on and strive for, because I think there's continuity, consistency, especially when we have our younger kids or primary grades, K through second. So if they're having a team coach, they know the parents, they know the teachers that are coming in. I think it would be huge versus having a substitute teacher. The old days when you could call in sick, you have it's like anything. It's almost like we're texting instead of picking up the phone or
Right.
seeing somebody face to face. Probably a lot easier to just call in versus not call in, but actually
Go on the computer. Yep.
We're anonymous. You're not anonymous. You have a number, you have your face, but it's not a face-to-face interaction. So I'm wondering if especially for staff that really only absent. So I'd be curious to see if we put a program like that in place, what it would look like, and if we could see less absences than what we're seeing now. And also, as Bruce had mentioned, without, not consecutive, but you have somebody that has the flu or has surgery or who's out ill for a while.
Right.
You certainly don't want people to be penalized for that.
I was just reminded that 5 days was the number that we looked at. So anything that was 5, because I think that at that point you start requiring a doctor's note and so forth. So, but we did pull out all of anyone who actually went on an FMLE leave, people who were consecutively out with doctors' medical certification. We tried to pull that out of the system. The other thing that I will say is that in the past we didn't do a great job with ASAP. So this year we've done, I wouldn't even suggest going back and looking at ASAP beyond last year, because there were leaves and PD and there was everything in there. This year we've been documenting much better. Next year you'll probably even be in a better place. So now your year over year will start now, 17, 18 and going forward. And you have the data, right. Right.
And there might be valid reasons.
Right.
The data to support that.
And then you have the incentives that you would put in place that will then start, you might see trends changing. And a better flu season, even though we're not seeing that next year yet. So just remember next year, this flu season, when you look at the data.
Brutal.
Right. Right.
If no one else, just.
Yeah, I do want to see Mr. Lyons, Ms. Meyer-Mitchell, Mr. Kimmel.
In New York City, we had a category called self-treated days. You didn't have a doctor's note. We're, at the time, I don't know if it was the contract or what we called Chancellor's regulations. More than 3 self-treated days, more than 3 days consecutive, you had to. But is there? The logic of the system, and I don't remember all the details. It's been all of 6 years. I don't remember all the details, but the logic of the system made it that you didn't want to have self-treated days, the way it worked. I don't know how it works here, how exactly it works. So you're absent one time, and you don't have a note. It's self-treated. You're absent 1 day, 2 days. You said 5 days.
It depends on our contracts, but yeah, for this study, it was 5 days that we looked at.
Okay, but is there anything that distinguishes self-treated days from days where you come in with a medical certificate of some sort?
Yeah, it varies by contract. So some contracts may be, you can be out for 3 days, and if you are out more than 3 days, you have to bring a medical note from a doctor. If you come back before that time, you wouldn't have to bring the note.
If I were just at the point, if I remember correctly, and contracts changed, you were only allowed in New York City a certain amount of self-treated days a year. And then I don't know what the consequences were after.
Right.
So it forced it put you in kind of like in a bind. You had to be careful taking the Fridays and Mondays because you're using up your self-treated days quickly.
Right.
And you had to watch them.
A lot of our policies will say consecutive days. So if you're out for more than these amount of consecutive days, you will be required to have certification from a doctor in order to return. Similar, but not, not quite similar.
Good, Mr. Kimmel? Anybody have any follow-up questions, Ms. Corbett? Okay.
I'm okay right now.
I think we're set, so I'm just going to jump in really quickly.
Okay.
I do want to echo Mr. Meek's comments earlier, Ms. Sherry, that you have done so much for this district, and I thank you so much for your service. I think a real shining example is what you've been able to do with ASOP and your focus and intent on making sure that this reporting mechanism helps us overall benefit the district. And I think that something that has been echoed around here is that, when we're able to look into this and we're able to analyze the data, we can see what that root cause is. Whether it be morale, whether it be some sort of, whatever it might be, I want to make sure that we are using this data as well to help our teachers, With that being said, there are some troubling numbers in here for me. I think that the Friday number is something I'd like to have a little bit more information around. Also, in the 10 to 15 day break period, is there a way we can get a breakdown of, feels like we're going to take off in here, in the 10 to 15 day percentage, or could we get a breakdown of what percentage of that number is represented by 10 days, 11 days, 12 days? I'd just be curious because it would be interesting to see if they trend more towards one end or the other. I think that could be telling for us as we continue forward. I do want to give a shout out though. I mean, the 5 to 6% with perfect attendance, that is no easy task as a teacher.
I think it's something to be incentivized.
I think that is remarkable. And I mean, specifically for perfect attendance, I think that that would be something I would love to see as a recognition.
Yeah.
You know, for myself in the private sector, 15 days would be lovely. I have to be honest, I'm slightly jealous. So I look forward to the continuation of review to make sure that our students are benefiting, to make sure that we are supporting our teachers as necessary. I do not want this to be perceived in any way as an attack as it might appear to be. From my perspective, this is material that I want to use along with my fellow board members to improve the lives of our teachers, our students, administrators, to make it work better. The numbers are glaring, but that doesn't mean that anyone's necessarily at fault. I want to make this as positive a turnaround as possible and also address any potential issues that are concurring. So that's it.
I just wanted to say a couple things. One, I hope that it does not come across as attack. I know from the talent office, we're actually excited about implementing incentives and things for teachers. We're actually excited about wellness programs. We do believe that it will help with attendance. The other thing I wanted to say is that Stephanie Garrett, who I mentioned before, has been focused on ASAP this year. She has been the person who has been, discovering things in the sub-budget and all of the data that I'm presenting today. She is the person who is the expert in this. So she will continue to be here when I am not.
I was going to say she's been following you to Hartford now. Is she sure?
No, she's not. I wouldn't do that to the district. But she would continue to work with Anthony Shannon to implement these strategies. But as you continue to need data, and I did jot down what we're looking for, make sure that you ask that Stephanie is on it, and Frank knows that she'll find. She's the data lady.
Thank you for the reassurance.
So again, Stephanie, thank you very much for your help.
Thank you, Stephanie. This is remarkable data.
Okay. All right. So I will send some information back to the board on what we asked for, and we look forward to putting incentives in place, and also look forward to working with NFT on some of our initiatives.
Fantastic. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Therese. Thanks.
Okay. Now we get to move on to our public comment. Brenda, would you mind? I know it was over there. I don't know if it's still there. Okay. Well, Mr. Meek, you've lucked out. You do not have to run any public comment this evening.
That makes my egg timer ready.
So with that, I do just want to make a few quick comments. A big thank you to NECC, Yvette Gorovich, and Maureen Sullivan for hosting us tonight. It was my first time in the building, and it will not be my last. I want to thank all of our presenters this evening. And again, thank you to Shri Sherry for your service here to the district. We're going to miss you, but thank you for getting us off in a really great direction in talent. So with that, the chair will take a motion to adjourn. Ms. Keyes, motion. Second, Ms. Corbett. We'll go with Ms. Corbett. Why not?
Sorry, Mike.
All in favor? It's unanimous. Meeting adjourned.